The sterile hospital room was supposed to be a safe haven, a place where people came to heal. But for one woman, it became the site of a terrifying attack. Pregnant, vulnerable, and alone, she never imagined that the last person she'd see before giving birth would be Karen, the ruthless HOA president who had made her life miserable for years. With no regard for the woman's condition, Karen stormed into the room, her eyes filled with malice and rage. But what happened next would leave Karen shocked beyond belief. The pregnant woman wasn't who she appeared to be, and the family she was tied to would soon turn Karen's world upside down in ways she never saw coming. The hospital corridors echoed with the soft hum of machines and the occasional shuffle of nurses and doctors. But in room 302, a storm was brewing. Jenna Moore, a woman in her late 20s, lay on the bed, clutching her swollen belly as she prepared for the arrival of her first child. Her heart raced with both excitement and nervousness. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life. But the fear that had consumed her since her encounter with Karen had left a bitter taste in the back of her throat. Karen, the president of the HOA, had been a thorn in Jenna's side for months. It started with small, petty rules about the lawn, complaints about the color of her front door, and finally escalated into harassment over noise complaints. All because Jenna was a young, single woman trying to raise her family in peace. But nothing had prepared Jenna for what Karen would do next. As the contractions intensified, Jenna felt a sense of dread. She knew that Karen wouldn't stop. The woman had made her life a living nightmare. But Jenna never expected Karen to follow her into the hospital room. There, in the quiet, sterile space meant for healing, Jenna would come face to face with the woman who had tormented her for months. What Karen didn't know, what no one in that hospital room knew, was that Jenna wasn't just an ordinary woman. Her family had secrets, and those secrets were about to change everything, not just for Jenna, but for Karen as well. Jenna had been through a lot. She wasn't the kind of woman who easily let things get to her. She had worked hard for everything she had. Her modest home, the quiet life she had carved out for herself, and the beautiful baby that was soon to be born. But Karen's relentless pursuit to make her life miserable had worn her down, and it seemed like no matter what she did, there was always another complaint, another rule, another restriction. The final straw had come when Jenna had thrown a small baby shower at her house. It wasn't loud, it wasn't disruptive, but Karen had somehow managed to get a noise complaint filed. Jenna had tried to ignore it, but the pressure was building. The small community that she had once felt welcomed in now felt like a prison, and Karen was the warden. When the doctor had told her it was time, Jenna had felt a strange sense of relief. At least here in the hospital, she could focus on the birth of her child, free from Karen's interference. Or so she thought. As Jenna's contractions grew stronger, she lay in bed, her mind racing. The nurses were in and out, checking on her, adjusting the monitors, and making small talk to keep her calm. Jenna had never been so anxious in her life. The birth of her child was supposed to be a joyous occasion, but with every passing minute, she couldn't shake the fear that Karen might find some way to ruin it. It was then that the door to her room opened. Jenna's heart skipped a beat as she saw the figure standing in the doorway. The last person she had expected to see was Karen. But there she was, her sharp features twisted into a scowl, her posture stiff with disdain. "What the hell are you doing here?" Jenna's voice trembled, a mix of disbelief and anger. Karen stepped into the room, her eyes scanning the sterile space as if it was beneath her. "I'm here because I'm the one who runs this neighborhood. And someone needs to teach you a lesson about respecting the rules," she sneered. Jenna's breath caught in her throat. "Are you serious? You come to my hospital room? You have no right to be here." Karen didn't seem fazed by Jenna's outburst. She walked closer to the bed, her heels clicking against the floor as if she owned the place. "You've been nothing but trouble since the day you moved in," Karen said, her voice low and venomous. "You think you can just do whatever you want? No one is above the rules, not even you." Jenna clenched her fists, trying to control her anger. She was in the middle of labor, and the last thing she needed was Karen's toxicity infecting the one place she should feel safe. "Get out of my room," she snapped. "I'm not going to deal with you right now." But Karen wasn't backing down. She didn't leave. Instead, she took another step forward, her face inches from Jenna's. "You've made my life miserable, and now I'm going to make sure you learn your place. It's time you realized who's in charge around here." Jenna's mind was spinning. How could Karen be so heartless, so determined to ruin something as important as the birth of her child? And what was this all about? Jenna had never done anything to personally offend Karen. Yet here, she was on a mission to tear her down at the most vulnerable moment of her life. "I've had enough of you," Jenna said through gritted teeth. She was beyond furious now. "Get out, or I'll have security remove you." Karen didn't move. In fact, she seemed to relish the tension, feeding off it like a predator savoring the hunt. "You think you can get rid of me that easily?" she said, her voice dripping with arrogance. "I'm untouchable, Jenna, and you'll see that soon enough." But then, as Karen stood there, gloating, something unexpected happened. Jenna's contractions became more intense, and the pain surged through her, more powerful than she had ever felt before. She gasped, clutching the edge of the bed, her body tensing as the reality of childbirth set in. For the first time, Karen seemed to notice the pain that Jenna was going through. Her expression shifted from one of malice to something else, something that resembled concern, but it was fleeting. Before Jenna could even speak, Karen's phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced down, her expression suddenly tightening. "This isn't over, Jenna," Karen spat, as if the pain of childbirth didn't matter. "You'll regret crossing me. All of you will." With that, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the room, leaving Jenna behind, breathing heavily, fighting against the pain. But there was something more to this. Something Karen didn't know. Jenna wasn't just any ordinary woman, and Karen's worst nightmare was about to be revealed. The hours that followed Karen's abrupt departure were a blur. The pain of contractions continued to intensify, but Jenna tried to focus on what was happening inside her, the life she was about to bring into the world. Despite the overwhelming anger still burning in her chest, she pushed through, knowing that this moment was far too important to let anything or anyone steal her focus. Jenna's mind kept replaying Karen's words as she lay in that sterile hospital bed. "I'm untouchable, Jenna." The words rang in her ears like a bad echo, reverberating with the truth of the woman's arrogance. But as much as Karen believed she was invincible, Jenna knew she wasn't. Jenna's family had power, power that Karen could never have imagined. The truth that Jenna had kept hidden for so long was about to unravel, and Karen would soon learn that she had no idea who she was dealing with. The next few hours felt like an eternity. Doctors came in and out, checking on Jenna's progress, while nurses monitored her vitals and made sure she was comfortable. But all Jenna could think about was Karen. What had she meant when she said, "You'll regret crossing me"? It was clear Karen wasn't finished with her. But Jenna wasn't about to let the woman intimidate her any longer. This was about her child now, about starting a new chapter in her life, and nothing, especially not Karen's empty threats, was going to take that away. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the moment of truth arrived. Jenna's contractions had reached their peak, the pain almost unbearable. But she found strength in the thought of her baby's arrival. Her family's legacy was on the horizon, and soon, nothing would matter but the child she would hold in her arms. Just as the room began to quiet, with the doctor preparing for the final stage of labor, the door to the room opened. Jenna's head snapped up, thinking it might be a nurse coming to check on her, but instead, she froze, standing in the doorway, her face pale, with a mix of shock and curiosity, was someone Jenna had never expected to see. It wasn't Karen. It wasn't even a hospital staff member. It was her father. The man who had been a mystery to her for as long as she could remember, the man whose absence had left a void in her life that she had never been able to fill. The man whose identity had been kept secret for so long, the man who had always seemed like a distant shadow in the background of her existence. Her biological father, a man who, until that moment, had been nothing more than a name on an old, dusty legal document. Jenna's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the man standing in the doorway. Her body froze, the contractions momentarily forgotten as she tried to process the sight of him. The man she had spent years wondering about. The man who had abandoned her and her mother without a trace. "Dad," she whispered, her voice hoarse. He nodded, his eyes filled with emotion, but he didn't move toward her. "Jenna, I'm sorry. I didn't know how to find you. I didn't know how to reach out." Jenna felt a surge of disbelief mixed with a deep, almost painful curiosity. This was the man who had left her mother to raise her on her own, the man who had disappeared from their lives without a single word of explanation. And now, after all these years, he was standing in front of her in her hospital room at the moment she was about to give birth to her child. "You," Jenna struggled to find the words. "You've been gone for years. I thought you left us. Why now?" Her father's eyes dropped to the floor, his hands shaking slightly as he stepped into the room. "I've spent years trying to find you. I've made mistakes, but I've never stopped thinking about you, Jenna. Never stopped wanting to be a part of your life." Jenna felt a tangle of emotions rise within her. The anger she had held onto for so long, the resentment, the pain of growing up without him, it all swirled together, threatening to overwhelm her. She had built a life without him. She had made peace with the fact that he wasn't there. And now, here he was walking back into her life as though everything could simply be forgiven with a few words. The doctor, sensing the tension in the room, quietly excused himself, leaving Jenna and her father alone. The only sound in the room was the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Jenna's mind was racing. How could he just show up now, after all this time? "I didn't know how to reach you," her father said again, his voice trembling slightly. "When you were born, things were complicated. I was young, I was foolish. But I've been looking for you ever since. And when I found out who you were, I knew I had to be here." Jenna's confusion deepened. "Who I am? What do you mean? What does that even have to do with anything?" Her father seemed to hesitate, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for the right words. "Jenna, your mother, she didn't tell you everything. She kept things from you. The truth about your family. About who you really are." Jenna's heart raced, her breath catching in her throat. "What are you talking about?" Her voice grew sharper, filled with the frustration of a woman who had been kept in the dark for far too long. "What could she possibly have kept from me? She gave me everything, but you disappeared." Her father walked toward her slowly, his face etched with the weight of years of regret. "I know. I'm sorry. But it's time you knew the truth. You've got a legacy, Jenna. A legacy that's bigger than anything you've ever known." Before Jenna could process what he was saying, her father reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn envelope. He set it down on the table beside her. "Everything you've ever wanted to know. The truth about who you are. About your real family. It's all in here." Jenna stared at the envelope, her pulse pounding in her ears. She could feel her breath quicken, her mind spinning. What was he saying? Her real family? She had always wondered who her father was, but now it seemed like there was so much more to the story than she could have ever imagined. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you," her father continued, his voice thick with emotion, "but I've been trying to protect you in my own way. You'll understand soon." Jenna's hand trembled as she picked up the envelope. Her heart pounded in her chest as she slowly opened it. Inside, there was a letter, but it wasn't just any letter. It was a letter from her mother, a letter that contained the truth about her family, about her father's past, and about the legacy that was waiting for her. Jenna's hands shook as she read the words on the paper. The truth was finally coming to light, and it was about to change everything. Jenna's mind raced as she stared at the envelope in her hands. The paper felt old, almost fragile, as if it had been kept hidden away for years. The weight of the letter was enough to make her hands tremble, the anticipation thick in the air. She didn't know what to expect, but she knew one thing. Everything she thought she knew about her life, about her family, was about to change. Her father, standing near the door of the hospital room, seemed distant, almost like a stranger. His presence felt surreal, as if the years of abandonment had never truly been bridged. He had been a ghost in her life, a figure she had never known, but now here he was offering explanations or perhaps more questions. What's going on? Jenna's voice cracked as she looked up from the envelope. What truth are you talking about? And why now? Why didn't you come back sooner? Her father sighed, walking slowly toward her, his face lined with guilt. I never stopped thinking about you, Jenna. But I wasn't ready to face what I had done. I wasn't ready to face your mother or the choices I made. But you have the right to know the truth now. The words hung in the air, their weight more than Jenna could bear. She wanted to ask him more, to demand answers to the questions that had plagued her for years. But the letter in her hands beckoned, as though it held the answers she had been searching for. Taking a deep breath, Jenna opened the envelope with shaking hands, carefully unfolding the letter inside. Jenna, if you're reading this, then the time has come. You deserve to know the truth about your family, about your father, and the legacy you've been born into. It's a truth that your father and I decided to keep hidden, but it's yours now to make sense of, to decide what to do with. You've probably wondered about your father, about why he left us. The truth is, he didn't leave us because he wanted to. He left because he had no choice. You see, Jenna, your father comes from a powerful family, a family that you've never known. His legacy is tied to a line of wealth and influence that stretches back for generations. The kind of influence that reaches into politics, business, and even law enforcement. And it's that legacy that brought him and me together. Your father and I were in love once, but we were also caught in a dangerous world. A world where secrets were currency and power came at a cost. When we found out I was pregnant, everything changed. Your father had to make a decision, one that would tear us apart, one that would keep you from knowing the truth about your family. You've lived your life thinking that you were just a regular woman, living a regular life. But that's not who you are, Jenna. You come from a family of influence and power. The decisions your father made were to protect you from the life he left behind. And it's time for you to know what that life truly means. Your father is a part of a powerful dynasty, and you, Jenna, are the heir to that legacy. Jenna blinked, rereading the words on the page as if they were a riddle she couldn't solve. Her mind was reeling. She had always known there was something different about her family, something that didn't quite fit, but this was beyond comprehension. A part of her wanted to laugh, to tear up the letter and dismiss it as another of her father's attempts to make up for the past, but the weight of the words held her in place. Her father's family was powerful? An heir to a dynasty? How could this be? She looked up at her father, the man who had once been nothing more than a name and a mystery. He was watching her with a look of pain in his eyes, as though he knew what she was feeling. You're not just any woman, Jenna, he said, quietly, his voice hoarse. I tried to protect you. I thought you'd be better off living a simple life, away from the world I left behind. But the truth is, you've always been a part of it. Jenna shook her head, trying to process the words. What are you talking about? What does this mean? I've never been part of any dynasty. I grew up with my mom, with nothing. I don't know anything about what you're saying. Her father stepped closer, his gaze intense. I know this is a lot to take in, but everything your mother told you about me, about why I left, it wasn't the whole story. There's a powerful family in our past, and it's time you understood that your life, your legacy, is tied to that. And whether you want to accept it or not, Jenna, there are things you need to know. Things that will affect the future, your future. Jenna's head spun. Legacy, power, dynasty. These weren't words that belonged in her world. Her world had been full of modest means, her mother struggling to make ends meet. She had never felt any sense of belonging to a legacy. Her family was just her and her mom. That was it. She had never once thought about wealth or power, never imagined that there was something more waiting for her in the shadows. But now, here was her father, telling her that she was part of something much bigger than she had ever imagined. A part of a legacy that could change everything she thought she knew about herself. She felt as though the ground beneath her was shifting. I know this is overwhelming, her father continued, his voice filled with regret. But you have to understand, Jenna, Your mother and I made a choice for you. We kept you away from this world because we thought it would be better for you. We didn't want you to be dragged into the same dangerous life that I left behind. But now it's time for you to decide what kind of life you want." Jenna clenched her jaw, trying to push back the whirlwind of emotions swirling in her mind. And Karen? How does she fit into all of this? What does she have to do with my life and this legacy? Her father's face darkened, and for a moment, Jenna saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected: fear. Karen knows more than you think, and she's not going to let this go without a fight. She's tied to the same network of people that I'm a part of, and she's always been after something. What exactly, I'm not sure, but she's a player in a much bigger game. Jenna stared at her father, trying to absorb it all. Her head was spinning. She had no idea how her life had become so complicated, but the one thing she knew for sure was that her encounter with Karen had only been the beginning. The truth was out there, and it was only a matter of time before Karen came for it, and for her. But what kind of life had she truly inherited? What was this legacy her father spoke of? And what would Karen do now that she knew the truth about who Jenna really was? The days following her father's revelation were a blur of uncertainty, each hour heavier than the last. Jenna had spent her entire life thinking she was just a regular woman, struggling with the challenges of single motherhood and trying to make ends meet. Now her world was upside down. She wasn't just Jenna Moore, a woman living a quiet life in a suburban neighborhood. She was part of something far bigger, a family legacy steeped in power and influence, a world she never asked for, but one she was suddenly thrust into. The letter her father had given her lay on her bedside table, untouched for hours. She couldn't bring herself to read it again. The words were seared into her mind. A legacy, an heir to a dynasty. Her thoughts churned with questions she didn't have the answers to. What did this all mean for her? What did Karen have to do with any of it? Jenna's mind kept returning to that moment in the hospital room when her father revealed that her family was connected to a powerful dynasty. She had wanted to believe it was just a bad dream, but the truth was undeniable. She wasn't just a girl who had been raised by her mother. She wasn't just a pregnant woman in a hospital room about to give birth to her child. She was someone with power, a power that could change everything. And then there was Karen. Karen, the HOA president who had made Jenna's life miserable for months, had now become more than just a nuisance. She was a part of the larger picture, someone who had her sights set on more than just neighborhood control. If what Jenna's father had said was true, Karen was connected to the same people who made up her family's world. But why? Jenna could feel her world shrinking as she sat in her room, the questions piling up faster than she could sort them out. She didn't want this. She had spent her whole life trying to escape from the shadows of her past, from the unknowns of her father's disappearance, and now it seemed like she couldn't outrun it. The doorbell rang, pulling her from her thoughts. For a moment, she considered ignoring it, but she knew she couldn't. Her curiosity and a sense of obligation pulled her toward the door. As she opened it, she saw the boy from the neighborhood, the one who had been there when Karen had kicked her out of the park. "Jenna," he said, his voice calm but with an undercurrent of urgency. "Can we talk?" She stepped aside, allowing him to enter. Her mind was still reeling from everything her father had said, but there was something about him, something in his eyes, that made her want to trust him. "I know this is hard," he began, taking a seat at the kitchen table. "But I think you need to know something." Jenna sat across from him, still unsure of where this conversation was going. "What is it?" "Karen's not just a neighbor. She's been involved in more than just the HOA. I've seen things that I'm sure you don't know about." Jenna felt her chest tighten. "I don't know what you mean." "I've been trying to get information for a while," the boy continued. "I found out Karen is connected to some dangerous people, the same people your family is involved with. And I think she's been keeping tabs on you. She knew who you were before you even knew." Jenna's heart stopped. "What are you talking about? Why would she know about me?" "Because your family isn't just some random name. I don't have all the details, but from what I've been able to dig up, your family's name carries weight in a lot of circles. The ones Karen moves in, the ones your father left behind. Jenna shook her head, feeling the room spin. But I don't even know these people. I've spent my whole life trying to forget them. I know, the boy said, his voice gentle. But you need to understand something. Karen isn't just a bully. She's after something that involves your family's past. And she's using her connections to try to control you, whether you know it or not. Jenna stood up, pacing the room as her thoughts scrambled. Her father's words, the letter, the boy's revelations, it was all too much. So, you're telling me that Karen knows who I am? That she's been plotting something this whole time? I don't know the full story, but I've seen enough to know that Karen is using you as a pawn in a much larger game. And she's not going to stop until she gets what she wants. Jenna stopped in her tracks, staring at the boy. What does she want? I think she wants control of your family's legacy, of the power your father left behind. Jenna felt her knees weaken as the weight of the situation finally hit her. Her father had tried to shield her from this world, but Karen had found a way to break through. And now, Jenna was caught in the middle of something she didn't understand, surrounded by forces far more powerful than she had ever imagined. Karen's dangerous, the boy continued, and she's not just going to walk away. If she knows who you are, she's going to come after you, harder than ever. Jenna's mind flashed back to the hospital room, to the way Karen had taunted her, and the venom in her words. She had always known that Karen was capable of cruelty, but now she understood that Karen's actions were part of a much larger scheme. A scheme that had its roots deep in Jenna's past, one that Jenna had never known existed. I can't do this alone, Jenna said, her voice trembling. I don't even know where to start. The boy stood up, walking over to her. You don't have to. We can figure this out together. We just have to be smart. We need to stay ahead of Karen, keep her off balance. And we need to find out what she's after. If she wants control over your family's legacy, we need to figure out what that means and why she's so desperate to get it. Jenna nodded, feeling a new sense of resolve settle in her chest. She might not have asked for this, but now that the truth was out, she had no choice but to face it head on. For her baby, for her family, and for herself, she had to understand what Karen was after. I'll help, the boy said, a determined look in his eyes. We'll figure this out, Jenna. Together. Jenna looked at him, her trust in him growing with each passing moment. He had been there when she needed him the most, when Karen had shown her true colors. And now, it seemed like they had no choice but to fight back. As the evening wore on, the plan began to take shape. Jenna had no idea how deep the rabbit hole went, but she was ready to dive in. She wouldn't let Karen's twisted games control her life any longer. The time had come to fight back, to uncover the truth, and to make sure her legacy, whatever it was hers to control. But one thing was clear: Karen's attempts to control Jenna were only the beginning. The battle for her future was just getting started. Jenna spent the next few days in a haze. The pressure of the situation was weighing down on her, and the constant stream of thoughts and emotions left her exhausted. She had always been able to rely on her instincts, but this new reality felt too complicated, too much. Her life had taken a sharp turn, and the road ahead was unclear. With the boy's help, she began digging into the details of her family's past, the legacy that she had been born into, the connections that had been hidden from her for so long. Every answer she uncovered seemed to raise more questions. Karen, it turned out, wasn't just a nuisance in her life, she was a player in a much bigger game. And the stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. Jenna's father had left her a trail, though she wasn't sure it was enough. She had only scratched the surface. The truth was buried in documents, old letters, and stories that her mother had never shared. But now she needed to know. She needed to understand what Karen wanted and how her family's secrets had entwined them both in this dangerous web. The following weekend, Jenna met with the boy at a small cafe just outside the city. It was a quiet place, the kind of place where no one asked too many questions. Jenna didn't want attention. She didn't want anyone to know what she was about to uncover. Karen was already looking for ways to control her, to manipulate the situation, and she couldn't risk drawing attention to herself just yet. The boy was already seated at a corner table, his laptop open in front of him. His face was lit by the soft glow of the screen, and when he saw Jenna walk in, he waved her over. She took a seat across from him, her hands shaking as she tried to collect her thoughts. "You okay?" he asked, noticing her discomfort. "I don't know," Jenna said, her voice filled with frustration. "I feel like I'm running out of time. I don't even know what I'm supposed to be looking for." The boy leaned in, his eyes focused. "We're getting closer. I've found some documents, some old connections. I think I know where Karen fits into all of this, but we need to find out what she's really after." Jenna nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She didn't want to feel so lost, but the enormity of the situation was overwhelming. She didn't have time to be afraid. She had to protect her baby, protect herself, and take control of whatever legacy Karen was so desperately trying to claim. "I think I've figured out something about your family's connections," the boy said, bringing Jenna's attention back to the conversation. He tapped a few keys on his laptop, and a file popped up on the screen. "Take a look at this." Jenna leaned over, squinting at the screen as he opened a series of documents. The first one was a letter from her father, dated several years ago. Her heart skipped a beat as she read it, recognizing the handwriting immediately. It was a letter addressed to her mother, a letter that seemed to contain a confession of sorts. The letter read, "I know what I'm asking of you is difficult. I don't want to hurt you, but there's no other choice. You have to protect Jenna. The people I'm connected to, they won't stop until they get what they want. I've tried to sever ties, but they have too much power. And now they know about Jenna. They know she's the one who can take the legacy forward. If they come after her, you have to make sure she never knows the truth. Keep her safe, no matter what it takes." Jenna's eyes widened as she read the words. Her father had known. He had known all along that there were people who wanted her, that there was a legacy she was meant to inherit, and that it wasn't just about her father's past. This was about power, control, and the dangerous people who had been part of her family's world. The boy watched her closely, sensing her shock. "That's just one piece, but it gives us an idea of what we're dealing with. The people your father was talking about, they're connected to Karen too." Jenna shook her head, trying to make sense of everything. "But why Karen? Why did she go after me? Why didn't she just go for my father?" The boy paused for a moment, his fingers tapping against the table. "I think it's because Karen didn't know about you. Your father's legacy, it's tied to something bigger than just wealth. There's something about you, something about your bloodline, that connects you to all of this." Jenna's stomach churned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that you're more important than you realize, Jenna," the boy said, leaning forward. "Karen isn't just after your father's wealth. She's after your place in the family legacy. She wants to use you to get what she couldn't have, and she's willing to do anything to make sure that happens." Jenna's mind spun as she absorbed the new information. She had never considered the possibility that she was part of something bigger, something with so many dangerous moving parts. But now, the pieces were starting to fit together. The more she learned, the more she realized just how far Karen's reach extended. "You said Karen was after my place in the family legacy," Jenna said, her voice quieter now, as if the weight of the words was too much. "But why now? Why has she been so obsessed with me?" The boy hesitated, his eyes dark with understanding. "Because you're the key. Your family's legacy, it's not just about the money. There's something else, something that Karen needs in order to complete her own ambitions. She knows you're the one who can unlock it." Jenna felt her blood run cold. "I don't want any part of this. I didn't ask for any of this. Why can't she just leave me alone?" "I know," the boy said gently, "but the truth is, she's not going to stop. And if we don't act fast, she'll find a way to take control of your life, your future. She's already made moves to put herself in a position of power. We have to beat her at her own game." Jenna's mind raced. She didn't know how to fight back against someone like Karen, but she knew she couldn't stand by and let her take everything. This was her life, her child's life, and now it was time to take back control. "Then we have to act. Jenna said, her voice steady. I won't let her take everything from me. Not my baby, not my future. The conversation with the boy had only made one thing clear to Jenna. The time to stay passive, to hope things would fix themselves, was over. She was in the fight of her life. And she wasn't going to back down without a fight. The air in Jenna's apartment felt heavier than usual. She sat at the kitchen table, the evidence spread out in front of her like pieces of a puzzle that she could barely begin to understand. The boy, who had become her only ally in this fight, was sitting across from her, his brow furrowed as he studied the documents on the table. They had spent the past few days combing through the information they had gathered, piecing together what Karen had been after and why she had targeted Jenna in the first place. It wasn't just a matter of petty revenge or neighborhood disputes. No, Karen had been after something much bigger, something connected to Jenna's family's past, and more specifically, the legacy that had been hidden from her for years. The truth was starting to take shape, but it was more twisted and complicated than Jenna had ever imagined. She had known that her family had a complicated history, but the secrets that had been buried were far deeper than she could have anticipated, and now Karen was determined to get her hands on whatever it was that Jenna had inherited. Jenna's hands trembled as she picked up one of the old documents that had been left behind by her father. It was a contract signed by her father and several other names she didn't recognize. The paper was yellowed with age, the ink faint but still legible. "This is it," Jenna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is the contract my father was talking about." The boy leaned over to get a better look at the paper. "This is serious. These names, they're all tied to people who run the underground business operations in the city, people involved in money laundering, arms deals, illegal construction. This is not a small-time operation." Jenna felt her stomach lurch. "You're telling me that my father and my family were part of something like this? Why didn't he tell me? Why did he hide it from me?" "I don't know, Jenna," the boy said, his voice filled with concern. "But it looks like your father tried to protect you from it. Maybe he thought you'd never have to be a part of it, never have to face what's coming. But Karen, she's looking for something that's tied to this legacy, something that's yours." Jenna slammed her hand down on the table, frustration rising within her. "Why couldn't he just tell me? Why didn't he just let me know what I was a part of? I don't want this life. I don't want anything to do with it." The boy looked at her, his eyes filled with sympathy. "I know, but sometimes you don't get to choose the life you're born into. What matters now is what you're going to do about it. Karen is coming for you, and we need to stop her before she destroys everything." Jenna's mind was spinning. Her whole life, she had wondered who her father was, why he had left, why he hadn't been there for her. And now, here she was, realizing that his absence wasn't just an unfortunate mistake, it was a deliberate attempt to keep her out of a world she hadn't even known existed. She had spent so many years hating him for leaving, but now, with the truth before her, she wasn't sure what to feel anymore. The weight of the situation felt suffocating. Karen wasn't just some angry neighbor with a vendetta. She was connected to this world of power, corruption, and wealth. And now, she was targeting Jenna, the heir to a legacy she didn't even know she had. "What is it that she wants?" Jenna asked, looking up at the boy. "What could possibly be so important that she's willing to do all of this to get it?" The boy hesitated for a moment, his brow furrowing in thought. "It's not just about money or power. She wants control. Your family's legacy holds the key to a network of operations that runs under the radar, untouched by the law. You're a part of that, Jenna. And she wants to use you to solidify her position. If she gets her hands on whatever it is you have, she could take over everything." Jenna felt a cold chill crawl down her spine. She had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. The thought of Karen being in control of something so dangerous, something that involved her own family, made her feel more powerless than ever. But she wasn't going to let that stop her. She couldn't. "We have to stop her," Jenna said, her voice shaking with a newfound resolve. "But how? She's already made her move. She's already gotten so many people on her side. How do we fight someone like that?" "We're not fighting her alone," the boy said. "We've got the community behind us. The people you've helped. The people Karen has terrorized. There's power in numbers, Jenna. And the truth is on our side." Jenna nodded, trying to steady her breath. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." "You are," the boy replied. "I've seen it. You've already been through more than most people ever will. And now, you've got everything you need to take her down. You've got the truth. You've got the support of your family. And you've got the will to fight." The next few days were filled with frantic meetings, late-night phone calls, and a constant sense of urgency. Jenna, the boy, and their small group of allies worked tirelessly to gather as much information as they could, piecing together what Karen was after and how they could stop her. Jenna knew they didn't have much time. Karen was moving quickly, consolidating power, making moves in the dark corners of the city that no one could see. But Jenna wasn't going to back down. She couldn't. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about her child, her future, and the future of everyone who had been silenced by Karen's cruelty. The final confrontation was drawing closer, and Jenna knew that they had to strike before Karen could strike again. The last thing she wanted was for her child to grow up in a world where people like Karen could control everything. She couldn't let that happen. "Are you ready?" the boy asked, standing next to her as they prepared for the next step in their plan. Jenna took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "I have to be." The time had come. The fight for her future and for the future of the people she cared was about to begin. The tension was palpable as Jenna sat across from the boy in their makeshift headquarters. The room was dim, the only light coming from the small desk lamp they had set up in the corner. Maps, files, and printouts of Karen's connections were scattered across the table. The battle had reached its peak, and Jenna could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on her. Every decision now carried the risk of everything falling apart. She had never imagined that her life would turn into something like this, that she would be fighting not only for her own future, but for the future of the community, for her unborn child, and for the truth that had been buried for too long. "We're close," the boy said, breaking the silence. "We just need to hit her where it hurts." "This is it, Jenna. We can't wait any longer." Jenna nodded, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. "I know, but I still don't understand why Karen is so obsessed with me. What's her endgame?" The boy leaned forward, tapping a finger on the map they had laid out. "Karen's after more than just control of a neighborhood. She wants what your family possesses, the power, the wealth, the influence that comes with your name. Your father was involved with some powerful people, and that legacy is tied to more than just money. There are hidden assets, networks, and resources that Karen knows will give her ultimate control. If she can manipulate you into giving up your claim to it, she'll rule everything. And she's willing to do anything to get it." Jenna felt her stomach tighten. It was more than just a fight over property or money. Karen wanted everything, a legacy that Jenna hadn't even known existed until now. And the thought of her child growing up in a world where Karen had control made her blood boil. She couldn't let that happen. "Do we have the evidence to prove it?" Jenna asked, her voice steady despite the rising fear. "Can we bring Karen down for good?" The boy nodded. "We have everything we need. The financial records, the secret meetings, the connections between Karen and the people your family used to work with. It's all there. But we need to act fast. If we wait any longer, Karen will make her next move, and we won't have a chance." Jenna's mind raced. She had always thought that her father's legacy was something in the past, something that didn't concern her. But now it was clear that this legacy was something very real, something that people like Karen would kill to control. And she had to be the one to stop it. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," Jenna admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The fear and the weight of the responsibility were overwhelming. She had never asked for any of this. She had just wanted to live a quiet life, raise her child, and escape from the chaos of her past. But now that past was pulling her in, and the fight for her future had become a battle against forces much stronger than she had imagined. The boy reached across the table and placed a hand on hers, a reassuring gesture that made her feel a little less alone. "You are ready." You've been ready since the day Karen first tried to push you out of your own life. You're stronger than you think, Jenna. You've come this far because you're capable. And we're in this together. Jenna looked into his eyes, the sincerity in his expression grounding her. It was true. She had come this far because she had refused to back down. She had fought for her peace, for her child, and now she had to fight for her future, for everything she had ever wanted. The next morning, Michael arrived at the community center where Jenna and the boy had arranged to meet with their allies. It had taken time, but they had slowly gained the trust of key people within the neighborhood. People who had once been too afraid to speak out, but who now wanted to see Karen gone for good. Word had spread about the corruption and lies that had plagued the HOA, and many had rallied behind Jenna and the boy, offering support in the form of information and resources. The community was starting to change, but Karen wasn't going down without a fight. Michael knew this would be the turning point. If they could expose Karen's full involvement in the underground operations, if they could show the world what she had been hiding, they could end her reign of terror once and for all. Are we ready? Michael asked, his voice firm but with a trace of unease. The stakes were higher than ever, and he could feel the tension in the air. This wasn't just about winning a battle, it was about exposing the truth and making sure that the future Jenna and her child would have wasn't shaped by people like Karen. We're ready, the boy said, his eyes focused. We've got all the evidence we need. It's time to show Karen that she can't control us anymore. Jenna stood at the front of the room, surrounded by the faces of those who had been wronged by Karen, by the system Karen had built to protect herself. They were here to fight for justice, to take down the woman who had destroyed their lives. And for the first time in a long while, Jenna felt a spark of hope. Michael turned to the group. We have everything in place. We'll release the evidence today. We'll make sure the media knows everything. And we'll ensure that Karen doesn't have the chance to cover her tracks this time. The boy nodded. Karen may be powerful, but she's not invincible. She's already lost. Now we finish this. Jenna looked at the group, the people who had become her allies in this fight. She could see the determination in their eyes, the quiet strength that had carried them through years of fear and silence. They were ready for this fight, and so was she. The day of reckoning arrived with a storm of activity. Jenna, Michael, the boy, and the rest of their allies worked together, preparing the final pieces of evidence to be released to the public. The news outlets had already been contacted, and the story was about to break wide open. The files, the financial documents, the recordings, everything was ready. There was no turning back. As the sun began to set, the first reports began to trickle in. Jenna's phone buzzed nonstop, her social media filled with notifications as the world began to respond to the breaking news. The story spread like wildfire. Karen Hughes, once the untouchable HOA president, had been caught in a massive web of corruption and illegal activity. She had manipulated the system for years, using her power to exploit homeowners, to line her pockets with ill-gotten gains, and to silence anyone who dared stand in her way. The truth was out there now, and Karen had nowhere to hide. Jenna couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over her as the news spread. This was it, the moment she had been fighting for. She wasn't just taking back her life. She was taking back the future of the community, the future of her child, and the future of everyone who had been under Karen's thumb for so long. But even as the media erupted with the truth, Jenna knew this was just the beginning. Karen wasn't going to give up easily. She would fight back, twist the narrative, and do whatever it took to regain control. But Jenna wasn't afraid anymore. She had the truth on her side, and this time, nothing, not Karen, not her lies, not her influence, could stop them. The future was in Jenna's hands now, and for the first time, she was ready to take control. The fight isn't over yet, and you can be a part of it. Jenna's journey is a reminder that standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. She fought back against corruption, against the odds, and against the people who tried to control her life. And now, the truth is out there for everyone to see. But Karen isn't done yet. The battle continues, and we need to make sure her story ends, once and for all. What do you think? Can the truth always win, no matter how powerful the enemy? Do you think Jenna made the right choices in her fight? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter in this explosive story. The fight for justice is only just beginning. Like, if you believe in standing up for what's right and share the story with your friends. The more people know, the stronger the message becomes. Let's keep pushing for truth and justice. Together, we can make sure the right side wins. Thanks for being part of this journey, and I'll see you in the next one.